Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, this is a teacher training for teachers of statistics, but we are going to talk about an Islamic education and how this makes everything different. In fact, this whole course was designed from this basic perspective that Islam offers a different way of thinking about learning and teaching. So, and this perspective is very much in conflict with the methodology of education that is currently dominant in the West. So, the methodology that we are currently using is not compatible with Islam. So, how we can change this? So, the first goal in any class that you take as teachers should be to engage the students, to explain what benefit they will derive from listening to you instead of playing with their mobiles. So, the very first task that a teacher has to undertake, and this is in every lecture, that what benefit will you get from listening to this lecture? Otherwise, typically the students do not pay much attention, and they figure that the material is available in textbooks, etc., and they will catch up with it when the next exam comes around. So they are not really very much interested in listening. But this is not the only reason. It's not the fault of the students. It's actually also the fault of the teacher, in the sense that normally what the teacher is saying is incomprehensible. He doesn't really have any, he's just replicating some dead material which doesn't have any meaning, doesn't have any impact. So, in this course, what I would like to do is provide you with some extremely valuable knowledge which is not available anywhere else. There is no other lecture like this. Unfortunately, we are all used to this rote memorization style. We have received our education in this way, and if you are teachers, typically you are delivering your education in this way, taking some dead piece of knowledge and asking the students to carry it on their shoulders until the exam. It doesn't get incorporated into the minds and hearts. So that's why the students ask, well, this you are teaching me, is this going to be on the exam or not? Because that's the only purpose of the education, is to be able to answer the questions on the exam. So now what I would like to put forth is a outrageous proposition, very difficult to accept, but what I am saying is that Western education is highly deceptive. It is more or less useless knowledge which is being masked as very useful. You have been taught to believe, as I was taught to believe, that what we are teaching is very useful knowledge. But in fact, this is not so. This is an illusion. What we teach in statistics especially, it can be useful, but the way it is taught currently, it is not. The students never learn the value of what they are learning in relation to the solution of real world problems. And there's an example which I often cite, is that when I was at Islamic University, we were doing interviews for lecturers for statistics, the newly launched department, and we interviewed about 8 candidates, all of whom had MPhil degrees in statistics, and all of them I asked a very simple question: of finding the average salary for 10 people. I said, okay, 9 of them have salary of 1,000 and one has 11,000, so you can add it up to 20,000. So what's the average salary? Not one of the 8 could answer this question. I was totally amazed. So this is the point. The point is that they have never understood that the material they are reading can actually be used in real world contexts. They only know how to do book problems and book solutions. One of the students actually wrote down the formula 1 over n summation I equals 1 to n xi. But I said, bravo, you are the best so far. Now tell me what is n and what is xi. He couldn't do that. So the same is true for all of the material we teach. We teach textbook, problem solution, quiz, but any real world application? No. So that means that the knowledge has no value other than to pass tests. So let me give you a quote from Ariel Rubinstein, one of the world's leading game theorists. And this is his quote. He says that nearly every book in game theory begins with the sentence, game theory is relevant to this, that and the other. All of you have also been taught, if you are in economics, that game theory is very useful. So nuclear strategy, financial markets, butterflies and flowers, and books are full of this. But he says, the last sentence, after nearly 40 years of engaging in this field, I have yet to find even a single application of game theory in my daily life, in the real world as well. So I would like to say exactly the same thing about econometrics. I have done econometrics for 40 years, and there is not one application of this which is of any value in understanding the real world. All the regressions that we run are misspecified. They never include all relevant regressors. They never satisfy all of the assumptions of regression model. This is guaranteed. Whenever you test that, you find that they fail. So the consequence is that econometrics and statistics is just fraud by numbers. As Joan Robinson said, the purpose of studying economics is not to acquire a set of ready-made answers to economic questions, but to learn how to avoid being deceived by economists. So this is the goal of our statistics course, is to teach students how to avoid being deceived by statisticians. As somebody else said, that there are lies, damned lies in statistics. It's the extreme form. So the purpose of this particular lecture, and also the purpose of the course that we are going to deliver to you with all the materials, our goal is to enable you to teach statistics in this way, which will give you a new way of thinking about and doing statistics. So the first element of an Islamic approach is that we need to understand the difference between useful and useless knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ made dua for acquisition of useful knowledge, and also he made dua for protection from useless knowledge. So unless we can understand what is useful and useless, we cannot teach anything. I mean, unless you have, because the useless knowledge is something that you are supposed to avoid very scrupulously. So how can we know whether what we are teaching is useful or useless? And unless we know, we are not really authorized or permitted to teach it. So the question is statistics useful knowledge? To answer this question, you have to use this knowledge. Have you ever used any of the statistics that you learned in any real world problem? Has it been of any use to you in your own life? Do you at least know of cases where statistics was used correctly to obtain a valuable result which could not have been obtained otherwise? If you don't know this, then you have no knowledge of whether or not statistics is useful. And I must say that when I was trained, we were never, because for reasons that I will explain, we did not know. And to the best of my knowledge, if you are taught in the same ways that I was taught, you will not know of a single relevant, valuable, useful application of statistics to real world problems, which could not be done by someone who did not know any statistics. So the question is that all the theory that you are teaching, does it have any additional value? Of course, I can show you examples where using numbers is useful, but is it something which anybody could do without taking your class, or have you given some added value? Is there something that you can do? Sometimes I ask this question that, okay, you have done a PhD in economics. Is there something that you can do that would be helpful to solve a real world problem which deals with economics, which could not be done by the average man on the street who has not got a PhD? So far I haven't received any answers to this question. So there is a dramatic difference between the Eastern and Western approaches to knowledge. Allah Ta'ala says, Hadainahum Najdain, we have shown him the two highways of the good and the evil. So we have all been trained on the Western highway. But the Western highway is designed to go from light to darkness. And we have no training in the Eastern highway, which goes from the darkness to the light. So that's why it's important to reconsider, understand this business from scratch. So I will go back to the basics of Islam. The first wahi which came down to the Prophet in the Ghar of Hira was Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. So this first way is all about knowledge. Read, the pen, the writing, and Allah Ta'ala is the teacher here. He teaches man knowledge which he did not have. So knowledge is actually central to the message of Islam. The message starts with read. There are so many ahadith about knowledge, seekers of knowledge, how the scholars are the ink of the scholars is more precious than the blood of martyrs. We are supposed to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Angels honor the people who are setting out in search of knowledge. And the merit of the alim, the scholar, over the abid, the one who spends all his time worship, is like that of the moon over the stars. So knowledge is extremely highly prized. But the question is, what I am teaching in statistics, is this knowledge? When we are sitting in class and we are teaching students, is this knowledge, is this the knowledge which will carry the rewards of when the students come to our class, will the angels be spreading their wings under their feet? Is this the type of knowledge which the Quran is talking about? If it is, then that's wonderful. That's what we would like to be. An Islamic approach to knowledge should be such that when we are teaching, the students who are coming to the classes are learning something which is sacred, which Allah Ta'ala commands us to learn. But for that, it has to be useful knowledge. For that, we have to know whether it's useful knowledge or not. And then there are many other conditions which Islam imposes on knowledge. So we can say safely that what we are teaching is not knowledge. It does not qualify it that way. However, it can be converted into knowledge so that my act of sitting here and teaching you becomes an act of worship. And the students who come and they are learning, they are also engaged in worship. And in fact, the ink that they use to write the notes is more valuable than the blood of the martyrs, provided that we take an Islamic approach to statistics. So Islam launched a revolution in world history. This is just to indicate that, you see, the Arabs were very backwards. They were in Jahiliyyah, they were ignorant, they were savage, they were barbarians, they were doing things like killing each other for trivialities, burying their daughters alive. This knowledge made them the leaders of the civilization, and it created a civilization which lasted for 1,000 years and dominated the world, and it generated philosophy and literature and arts and technology and science, everything. For 1,000 years the Muslims were ahead of the rest of the world in all of these things. So what was this knowledge that was given to the Muslims? Even the so-called European Enlightenment, which was the ending of their Middle Ages and Dark Ages. This is not written in the books of European history, but it's easy to prove that it was their conquest of Andalus, Islamic Spain, that gave them access to hundreds of thousands of books in the libraries of Islam. And this is what created the Enlightenment. It took them 2 centuries to absorb the material that they had gotten, which was alien to their own civilization. And a lot of material was translated and never acknowledged, like Copernicus's book on the Copernican revolution. It's all a translation. Copernicus was just a copyist. He was not a translator. Newton said that I have been able to see because I have stood on the shoulder of the giants, but nobody mentioned that these were giants of Islamic civilization, that they had the laws of motion and inertia, and all of these things were there. Newton did put it all together in a way that had not been done before, so he has credit, but unlike Copernicus, who didn't do anything new. But so anyway, the point of all this is not to take credit, but the point is that the nur of knowledge that was given to the Muslims in the form of the Quran, it is the source of all light that exists currently. So the critical question for us today is that today again we see that the Muslims are in darkness, ignorance, jahiliyyah, and they are acting like savages, just like the time of the dawn of Islam. So is it true that the message of Islam has lost all its power, or does it still have the same power that it did 1450 years ago? Now, the Quran complains to be complete and perfect. Allah Ta'ala says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum deenakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. So akmal means the best, the most complete, the most perfect. And Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran that what you have been given in the form of this Quran is better than anything that anyone can gather, any knowledge that they can get. It cannot compare with the knowledge that you have been given. But today, most Muslims believe that this is not true. We have been trained to think, and we have been teaching that this is not true, that the Western knowledge is superior to the knowledge of the Quran. When we teach statistics without making any reference to Quran, Islam, we are saying that, okay, there is some very useful knowledge, this is necessary to get by in the world, and the Quran and the Hadith have nothing to do with this knowledge. This is what we are teaching. So then we are saying that Islam does not provide us with complete and perfect guidance. Today, if we want guidance, we have to look to the West. This is what we are saying, this is what we are doing, and this is what we are practicing. So, in fact, by our actions, we are contradicting the Quran. So it is true that, as the prophecy says, Islam came as a stranger and it will become a stranger. So today, Islam itself is a stranger to Muslims. So let me describe my personal experience. I was not always thinking along these lines, and so it would be useful for me to go over briefly the experiences that I have had that have brought me to this point of view. I was 16 when I went to MIT in 1974, and I did my bachelor's in mathematics. And then I completed in 74 in 3 years. Then I did my master's in statistics from Stanford in 1976. and was awarded my degree in 1978. Actually, I submitted the thesis in 77, but it took a while to get the revisions and so on. At Stanford, I took 3 sets of core PhD courses. I took all the PhD courses in the economics department, the PhD courses in the maths department, and all the PhD courses in the stats department. So this was to be able to do econometrics, which requires deep knowledge of all of these 3. So when I was finished, I had the view that Western knowledge is very deep and complex and sophisticated. It would require a lifetime to learn. I have only picked up a little bit. Thousands of men laboring over centuries have generated this knowledge, and no one can hope to acquire it. So that was my view. But then when I started teaching, I had real difficulty that this knowledge that I have, I could not convey it. I was teaching at UPenn, which is one of the top 10 departments. But the students, I was teaching them what I had learned, and it was not possible to compress this into one semester. That was all we had. I was teaching the second course in econometrics. The first course in econometrics at UPenn in the graduate department was taught by Lawrence Klein, and I was teaching the advanced course. And I was teaching them very advanced stuff, but nobody could understand it. The students called it Space Odyssey 2001. Sorry, Econometrics 2001. Because clearly now you are all millennials, so you don't understand this. But in 1970s, there was this hit movie by Isaac Asimov, which was called Space Odyssey 2001. And the movie said that in 2001 we will all be going into space and meeting alien civilizations and so on. So that created a dilemma that, okay, I have all of this valuable knowledge, but I cannot transfer it to students, and I did not know, and I was not taught how to use this knowledge in the real world, because I was doing theoretical econometrics. So then, what use is this knowledge if I cannot convey it to others and I cannot do anything in the world with it? At that time, Klein was working on the Penn-Wharton model, and there was a whole group which did the macro modeling. But in our graduate school, we were taught to disdain real-world applications and believe in the purity and elegance of abstract theory. So I did not accept his invitation to participate in developing that model, because I thought I was doing something that was more superior. It required a lot more mathematics, was a lot more difficult than running regressions and making interpretations. So gradually I became aware of the serious problems with the knowledge that I had been given. First, there is this applied versus theory distinction, which I have been mentioning. Our graduate student advisor at at Stanford was Larry Lau, and I asked him, well, what should I specialize in? So he said, told him I want to do econometrics. He said, there are 2 types of econometricians. There are those people who get their hands dirty with real data, and then there is Takeshi Amemiya. He has never run a regression in his life, and these are the people who have the status and prestige. So I said, okay, why should I go for getting my hands dirty when I can have status and prestige? So this division between theory and application is the real killer. You have been taught along the lines of theory, and you only teach theory. You have never, if I'm not mistaken, you have never understood what use this theory is in terms of helping solve real world problems. You are given these fake problems. It seems to have something to do with data, but actually these are not genuine problems. Like you're told that, okay, calculate the average salary of the female teachers and average salary of the male teachers and decide if they are significantly different, and if so they are, then you have discrimination. This is a fake problem, because if you really want to study discrimination, then you have to do much more. You have to examine much more than just these numbers. So just like this, you have been given an illusion of usefulness. The textbook talks about real world numbers, so you get the idea that yes, this has something to do with the real world. But if you really want to study any real world problem, then you have to go far beyond just looking at a few numbers to decide. So you have been, this is why the illusion of usefulness is created. So in my own life, as I said, I was also convinced, just like everybody else is convinced, that the only path to knowledge is through the West. If we want to, and the whole ummah is ignorant, we have no PhDs, our research output is low, and so on and so forth, and the only way to solve this problem is to send our children to MIT and Harvard and Western universities so that they can bring back the knowledge and get back what is our real heritage. This is what the Muslims say, that the lost knowledge is the property of the Muslim. So we have to get it from China and we have to bring it back, because this is our real. But what about the non-lost knowledge? What about the Quran and the Hadith? Oh, those are no longer relevant for our modern day needs. So to make a long story short, for some reasons I went out in the path of Tabligh and Dawah for 4 months, and I spent 4 months carrying just a backpack and 2 pairs of clothing, and I did not feel very deprived. In fact, I experienced a simple lifestyle. So I understood that life is not about material comforts. Actually, life is about creating a connection with Allah, ma'rifat. This is all important. Now, throughout my career in Western knowledge, and all of it was Western knowledge, this was never mentioned, that this is something which makes any difference, or which matters, or which has any relevance. So, on the one hand, the most important component of our life, which will immediately matter, because when we die, and all of us are going to die, there is nobody who's going to be staying here forever. The first question which will be asked is, who is your Lord? And so, if we did not spend our life trying to find out, trying to learn who Allah is, then we will be unable to answer. And all of this knowledge, whether we became Qarun, or whether we became Fir'aun, whether we had the kingdom of all the worlds, or whether we gathered all the treasure, it will make no difference. And the Western knowledge that we have been taught has no clue about this. So this led me to a deep dilemma of the head versus the heart. The West gives us the training of the brains, but the East gives us the training of the heart. So this is the standard way that we Muslims explain the problem today, that okay, the Quran is useful for the Akhirah, it will be very helpful in the grave, but this world we have to follow the teaching of the West. That's what all our eyes shows us, and so there is 2 different areas of knowledge. One is where the West is ahead of us, and one is where the Quran. This is the standard Islamic viewpoint currently. But it doesn't make sense. This viewpoint does not make sense, because the Quran came, and the Muslims, they did not become great worshippers. They developed science, they developed technology, they developed civilization which was very rich and multidimensional. So it seems that the effect of the Quran is not confined to the grave and to the Akhirah. It also has some value for the real world. And the Quran also says that you have been given complete and perfect guidance, and it says that those with faith will be guided to the nur of knowledge, and those without faith will go from light to darkness. So it seems that the Quran is saying that it is sufficient for our guidance. But at the same time, the Quran has no calculus, no physics, no chemistry, no statistics, no econometrics, no biologies, no theorem proofs. So there is a dilemma, a paradox, a contradiction. Either we say that, okay, the Quran is our guide for spirituality and the West is our guide for the worldly matters, or we say the Quran is complete and perfect. We don't need any other type of guidance. So apparently the Quran is saying the first thing, but our eyes show us that the opposite thing. So with the experience of Tabligh, I came to the understanding that the Iman in the Ghaib, Iman in the unseen, means that if the Quran says something, it is true, and if my eyes show me something, and if my brain thinks something that is against that, then my brain is wrong and my eyes are wrong. So but I couldn't understand how. But it must be so that the Quran is true. But how is it so? I didn't know. I couldn't understand. So I made dua to Allah that Allah Ta'ala reveal this to me. Show me how it is so, because I don't understand it. It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be the case that all the light is with the kafirin, all the light of the knowledge of this world is with the kafirin. And we are in backwards and in ignorance and in darkness. So, as the hadith says that there will come a time when nothing will remain of Islam except the name, and nothing will left be of the Quran except the writing of it. So Allama Iqbal has the answer to this puzzle that I was facing, and so he solved it before me, and other people have been led to the light. He says that khira na kar sakiya mujhe jalwa danish farang, surma hai meri aankh ka khaki Madina aur Najaf. So our eyes have been dazzled by the brilliance of Western knowledge, so they cannot see. They have been blinded by the brilliance of. So we cannot distinguish between right and wrong, between good and bad, between useful and useless. And that is why we are deceived about the superiority of Western knowledge. So basically, knowledge, according to the West, is something which will allow us to make money, to get fame, to get riches, to become popular. But knowledge in the East means something completely different. Knowledge is knowledge which enables us to make progress, make spiritual progress, to grow as human beings. So this is the crucial difference. Knowledge is useful if it enters the heart, according to Islamic. So we have been trained in the head, but we have not received the knowledge of the heart. And we are not teaching knowledge of the heart. So basically, how can we reach our students? How can we reach the hearts of our students? This is the way to teach Islamic knowledge. If the knowledge does not reach the hearts, then it's useless. So, in Stanford, there were low enrollments in the social sciences. So, what they did, what I would have expected they would have done, would be that they would teach the students that learning about human beings and cultures and civilizations and history, this is valuable for itself. I mean, the knowledge itself is of value, but they did not do this. What they did was they created a campaign to show that people in social sciences can also get good jobs. So basically, the only value of knowledge is if it can earn money. So if we take that as the definition of knowledge, then it is true. The Western knowledge can earn you money much more than Eastern knowledge. But if you want to learn how to be a human being, then maths and chemistry and physics will not tell you anything about what is the meaning of life, how we should spend our lives, whether it is better to live in a huge castle with air conditioning, or whether it's better to live in a small hut which leaks when it rains, but where you have enjoy the love and companionship of sincere people. So Howard Hughes was the world's biggest billionaire at the time, but he became paranoid and psychologically disturbed towards the end of his life, and he believed that everyone was trying to poison him. So he had millions and billions, but they were of no use to him. So Western knowledge allows you to make money, but Eastern knowledge teaches you how to become a human being. And once you are a human being, then you can do a lot of other things as well. That is, you can have secular knowledge as well. So it was a gradual realization that, which took me years, that all I had been taught at Stanford was useless, completely useless. Not only was it useless for the akhirah, but it was also useless for the works of this dunya. What is valuable is experiential knowledge, knowledge that comes out of experience. It can be experience of the deen, it can be experience of the dunya. Yani, if I learn about history, learn about what happened in the Great Depression, what happened in the global financial crisis, what was the Reagan-Thatcher error. These are the things. If you want to learn economics, you have to learn 20th century economics. What happened? What was the World War? How was it caused? What was the effect on European economies? How did they recover? That's experience. That is knowledge. Now, what I was taught was mathematics in economics, which had no relation to either akhirah or dunya. Now, interesting and very important book is The Making of the Modern University by Julie Rubin. It is called Intellectual Transformation and Marginalization of Morality. What she writes is that in the 1920s, if you open any college catalog, you will see that these say that our goal is to build the character of the students, to create leaders, to teach them civic responsibility, social responsibility, to build their personality and character. This was the goal of college education. But for a process which is detailed in the book and which I won't summarize, gradually this was lost. Today, none of the college catalogs say anything about building character or personality. All of them say we will teach you how to build an atom bomb, but they don't teach that it is wrong to kill. In fact, the opposite is true. There is a course, you can find it on lectures in Harvard. If you look up murder and cannibalism at Harvard, and you will find the lecture. In the first lecture on a course in ethics, the professor creates an argument to show that everything is relative, and if you have to murder one person to save 100 lives, then you should do so. So, similarly, if people are on a ship and they are starving, then why shouldn't they kill one of the people and eat him to survive? So, this is what they are teaching in Harvard. Not morality, anti-morality. Now, the Islamic approach to knowledge says that do not seek knowledge to demonstrate your superiority over ulama, or to argue with the ignorant, or to entertain. And another hadith says that those who acquire knowledge to attract attention of people towards themselves, none of their deeds are accepted by Allah. So, this is all that I was taught. I was taught that knowledge was good for all of these things. I did not know that, if you don't have this intention, that what intention will you make for acquiring knowledge? So, Islam teaches knowledge of an entirely different kind. So, let us look at what I am arguing is something very strange, something which is very unbelievable. That something that you have considered with the whole, not just you, the whole ummah considered as the most valuable prize, the reason why the ummah is backward is completely useless. So, One of these is Ariel Rubinstein. All his life he has been studying game theory, and he says it doesn't apply to anything real. David Friedman had a career path very similar to mine, in the sense that he also published a lot of very advanced mathematical papers. But eventually he came to understand, because he got involved in real world trials of statistics, so he had to give evidence in favor of some. And then he realized that gradually that everything I am teaching is irrelevant. And when you go to do real data analysis with real numbers, then theory is useless. So eventually he wrote this book called Statistics. And in this book there is not one single mathematical formula, not one single equation. All of this mathematics just gets in the way of understanding. He also said that we have been running regressions for 100 years and it has not produced anything valuable. Let's just give up. So what we would like to say is that Islamic knowledge transformed human beings, and it has exactly the same power today. And this is the most powerful kind of education. And everything that we do can be an act of worship, and if we teach statistics in a way that it becomes an act of worship, and if we learn statistics in a way that it becomes an act of worship, then it will create the transformation that we are looking for, that it will change people. It will allow them to, it will change their personalities, it will change their ways of thinking about life. And so the first thing to understand is that human beings have infinite potential. Every human being carries within him the potential to change the world. So it means that when the teacher sits down in the classroom, he has to give great value to the students. He should think that sitting before me are Ibn al-Haytham, al-Ghazali, al-Kindi, al-Farabi. These are the treasures, the jewels of the Ummah. And it is my job to nurture them, the seed is there, I have to provide the water and the care and the nourishment so that they will grow. And if I fail to do this, I will be held accountable for this on the day of judgment. And if I succeed, then these students will far exceed anything that I can imagine. So this is how this teacher should sit. That's why you should never be late to class, because your students are more valuable than you are. And in potential they have. So you have to respect and honor your students. So basically the capabilities approach of Mahbub al-Haq, which revolutionized economics, is about developing human capabilities. That is the meaning of development, not acquisition of wealth. See, the West defines development as acquisition of wealth. But Islam defines development as human development. When a person learns how to be a human being, that is development. If a person learns to be a savage, a barbarian, then he is not developed regardless. So if a nation goes out and bombs a whole country for the sake of oil, they are savages, they are barbarians. Even the foreign secretary was asked on TV that is it worthwhile to kill 500,000 children for political goals? And she said yes, it's worthwhile. So she is ready to kill 500,000 children for political goals. Madeleine Albright, it's recorded on YouTube, you can see it. Later she apologized, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that the truth slipped out. So just like the atom has the power to explode and blow up cities, so every human being has the same power, even much more power. So we have to really understand that every moment is precious. We can't waste time of our students talking junk and garbage with them, wasting time. We have to make sure that the time that they spend with us, because I have responsibility. So every moment should be precious. We should be teaching them something of value. So, how is it, this great deception that is done, that makes useless knowledge appear like useful knowledge? There are two great divides which are made in Western education, which we have to overcome. We have to heal this in order to get to the Islamic modes of teaching. One is the divide between the idea of secular knowledge. There is some knowledge which deals with the world and it has nothing to do with religion. And then there is some knowledge which deals with religious affairs. So that has nothing to do with the world. So our religious knowledge is about masjid and about worship and about zakat and about qurbani and Eid. But if it comes to the real world, there is no relationship. I mean, chemistry will not tell us how to give zakat, but similarly, learning about the Sharia will not tell us how to teach chemistry. So this is a mistake, an error. Actually, the purpose of this course is that Islam can also teach us about statistics. And in fact, when I started on this journey, when I first came to the realization that yes, Islam is all-encompassing, it is complete, it also has insights to offer about statistics, I started with just one or two ideas that, okay, Islam can tell us a few things. And then gradually, as I worked, this course has been in development for 10 years, I realized it has a lot to say about statistics, not just a little bit. And so today, the course that I am teaching, it has no parallel anywhere in the world, because although I can teach it without mentioning Islam, it is true. So I can hide the Islamic impulse behind the development of the course, but the course has been developed by asking Allah for guidance and by thinking about how we can teach this course so that it would be useful for mankind. This is really, and it will not be harmful. Now you see, if I teach you how to build an atom bomb, it is knowledge, but it is very harmful for mankind. So in statistics, you don't know and you don't care. Actually, you're taught not to care. You said that you're teaching theoretical statistics, the person will go and he will be a statistical consultant and he can teach people how to raise taxes, how to hide facts, how to do many things. What he does is not your concern. I teach a person how to build a bomb. Whether he goes and kills people or not, that's not my concern. So this is the secular worldly divide. This has to be overcome. We don't accept this divide. Everything that we do has to be informed by religion. First, we must understand the statistics that I am teaching. Is it useful or is it not? That was the first question that I had to answer when I was teaching, because it is haram to teach useful knowledge, useless knowledge. So, if I don't know whether this is useful or useless, how can I teach it? And how can I find out whether it's useful or useless? Well, for that I have to use Islamic concepts. So that's one division. But the second division is also very important. That's the distinction between the theory and the applied. So once you say that theory is one thing and applied is one thing, I do theoretical econometrics, I just study textbooks. Somebody else will go and you can have a job in academia. In that case, you don't know anything about, the people who study monetary theory for their PhD, they have no idea what goes on in the state bank. And the people in the state bank, if they followed those theories, they would ruin the country in a flash. But they use their experience to avoid most of the mistakes that theory teaches you. Like, for example, everybody is taught that money is neutral. Now, if they were to believe that for 1 minute, the country would perish. Then they would say, okay, money is neutral, so we can print any amount that we like, and let's just double the money supply. Why are we having shortage, budget deficit? Why are we taxing people? Let's just double the money supply. Money is neutral, nothing will happen. Isn't that true? That's what you are taught in economics theory. all of the current major modern schools. So this is the difference between application and theory. Now the State Bank, they know that they can't do that because they have real world experience. But if you have theoretical experience, you won't know. So one of the key lessons, the driving impulse behind this course is that you cannot separate the real world from the theory. Theory cannot be studied in isolation from the real world. This insight, which is different from anything that any textbook says, is one of the key backgrounds of the course. The second key difference comes from understanding that when we talk about useful and useless, it has to be with respect to some purpose. If there is a goal, any goal, then something is useful if it allows us, helps us to get towards the goal. And something is useless if it doesn't allow. And something is harmful if it takes us away from the goal. And something is useless if it neither advances towards the goal nor helps. So useful and useless always have to be with some purpose. Now, the first purpose which we must understand, as me as a teacher and you as a student currently, is what is the purpose of our lives? This question is never mentioned in any Western textbook. But it just makes simple sense. Unless we have a purpose in life, nothing has any meaning. It's only with respect to purpose that we can say, should we be studying statistics? Yes, if it helps us to achieve our goals. Students often come to me for career counseling, and I say, first thing you have to decide, what do you want to do with your life? After you decide that, then we can ask whether you should get an education or not. And after that we can ask, if you are getting an education, which field. But everything has to be judged with respect to purpose. Most people don't have any purpose because you have been taught without explicit mention that the purpose is to make money. So students come and ask me, which degree should I take in order to make the most money? So the purpose of life is making the maximum amount of money. This is what economics teaches. Now actually, the underlying answer in the West is that what Bertrand Russell says explicitly. This message is hidden and buried beneath a Western education. But here we have an explicit statement that, man was created by an accident. Atoms came together and man turned into man. Nothing we do, whether we are heroes or cowards, whether we are good, bad, evil, it makes no difference whatsoever. Everything will die in a massive catastrophe when the sun goes nova, and nothing will remain. There is nobody who is watching us. If we do good, if we do bad, it makes absolutely no difference. So only on these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair can soul's habitation be built. So today, because science has proven this, that world was created by an accident, so we must accept this. We must be factual, even though this is a great tragedy. It's a great tragedy, people have done zulm to me, so I expect that somebody will do justice. If I'm hurt and I'm facing deep tragedy and I'm very sad, is there somebody I can ask? If I ask Allah, will He help? I always feel that. Everybody feels that. But they say, no, this is just an illusion. Nobody is listening. Nobody is watching. If you're hurt, nobody cares. If you're happy, nobody cares either. Life is completely meaningless. So actually, all 19th century Western philosophers suffered from nervous breakdowns, because this picture of life is so bleak, so inhuman, that you can't live like that. Nietzsche went mad, and he has this beautiful book, very brilliant philosopher. He said that the madman ran out into the streets saying, "You have killed God." Meaning that we have lost our faith in God. And you do not understand what a momentous event this is. This is not something simple. Getting rid of God from our lives is not something simple. It changes everything. But you have not realized this. Nietzsche understood the heavy implications of rejection of God, which his fellow philosophers did not. Albert Camus, the people who were sensitive and understood the meaning of living without God, he said that the only serious question is suicide. And if life is completely meaningless, should we bother to live, or should we commit suicide? Darwin was similarly disturbed. All major thinkers. So modern education is without purpose, without soul, without morality, without character. The graduates of the finest schools, Yale, they designed killing machines, designed to kill hundreds of thousands of people without any conscience, because this conscience, this soul, this morality doesn't exist in modern education. And eventually, like McNamara, at the end of his life, he expressed his regret that, I killed people without count in Vietnam, and I didn't do well. So that's why the Western education that we are delivering to our students is very anti-Islamic, very poisonous. It actually poisons the hearts and makes them blind to the realities. And so we have to change the way we are teaching. The first step of all knowledge and action is to define your purpose in life. I tell my students that, look, I'm giving you this knowledge, but this is not for the purpose of getting a degree and making money. You should use this to serve the ummah. This is a very simple purpose that you can have. This knowledge is valuable. This knowledge is used to deceive and cheat the ummah, like the Perkins in Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So you are learning this weapon in order to protect the ummah from attacks by these statisticians who prove lies and then use this to get you to follow wrong policies. Like today, the IMF deception, that IMF is helpful when in fact it is extremely harmful, because you doctor the numbers and you get people to believe that they are very useful. So once we have this purpose, then we can see that then we can fit this knowledge into the framework of a worship and ibadah. So Allah Ta'ala tells us the purpose of life. He says that خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That He created life and death to see who does the best of deeds. So this is not just a competition, it's a competition to see who can do the best. We are in a race, but the race is not one for getting the most money or having the biggest house. It is a race to do the most beautiful deed, the one that will be liked the most by Allah. So we have only one shot at this life. So give it the best that you have. This is how you motivate your students. And I can assure you that if you study hard, because the West is in complete darkness, you can overtake them. This is, you see, the conventional teaching, it makes you hopeless, because, and actually I was hopeless that when I was started econometrics teaching, the knowledge that I had, I knew that it would take years and years and years of training to give, and then what use would it be? So but if all that knowledge is useless, and gradually I understood that proving theorems, the Gauss-Markov theorem, is completely useless, garbage, makes no difference to anybody, whether somebody knows it or not. It doesn't buy you a cup of coffee, as they say. So, we are teaching tons and tons of garbage. And once you understand that, then you have hope. Now we can overtake them, because they are Yani, you see, once basically it's an issue of turning your head around. Currently, our students are ignorant, they know zero. But they are facing the West, so the West is 100 miles ahead. But if we say all that they have done is advance in ignorance, they have gone from light to darkness, then we just turn around, then we are 100 years ahead of them, even though we have zero knowledge. Then we make progress, then we can go far ahead. And it is true. The econometrics they are doing is pathetic. Recently I gave a lecture on a realistic approach to econometrics. It's available on YouTube, in which I said that using modern econometrics you can prove anything you like. It's all wrong, and there is a way to do it correctly. It's not that, and we can learn it. And we can be the world leaders in knowledge as 1400 years ago our Muslim ancestors became the world leaders in knowledge. So today the same option is open to us today. All that we need is to avoid being mesmerized by Western knowledge. Khira na kar saka mujhe, jalwaye danish faram. Our eyes have been blinded by the brilliance of Western knowledge, so we think that's all there is. There's nothing else in the world. And that's completely wrong. So the revolution starts from within us. Allah Ta'ala does not change a nation until they change themselves. There's a piece of flesh in the body. If it becomes good, the whole body becomes good. And if it gets spoiled, the whole body gets spoiled. And that is the heart. Useful knowledge enters the heart. So we have to start with cleansing our own hearts, tazkiyah. So how can we make teaching and learning the best of deeds, the actions which we will be weighed on the day of judgment in the balance, and they will count for something. So first thing to do is to have a clear purpose which is valuable. And so my purpose is to serve the ummah. And we ask our students to serve the ummah, because Allah Ta'ala says that the mankind is the all of the creation is the family of Allah, and those who serve the creation, they are beloved of Allah. So if we make the intention, instead of the intention of making money, getting famous, getting jobs, we make the intention that I will use this knowledge to help people. So, but how can we make this knowledge helpful? For that we have to overcome the theory-applied divide. We have to go out and actually use this knowledge. When we use this knowledge, then we will find out whether it's useful or not. So this involves going out to learn more. You have not been taught this. You have been given an illusion of usefulness. Now you have to actually go and see how this knowledge is being used in the real world. This is not part of Western teaching, because they say that all you need to do is the theory. The field work will be done when you go out in the field. If you are hired by the airlines to study their airline demand and pricing, then you will study what this is. When you are doing theory, you just do regressions without understanding what is going on. So we say no. You cannot do statistics without going out. So you will have to learn, because this knowledge has to be created. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the Western textbooks, except in there are people who have done useful things, like David Friedman. His book is full of useful applications of statistics, and he also shows, very interestingly, that if you apply statistics without thinking, just by following the theory, you can get disastrous results. And there are many examples he shows where people did trials, but they were not controlled trials, and on the basis they deduced that this medicine is effective, and they gave it to thousands of people, and it caused massive amount of damage. Today we say, yes, I ran a regression of FDI on GNP, and FDI is so and so useful. Total garbage. I mean, your regression cannot tell you whether or not FDI is good, and yet the question is meaningful and important to answer. But for that we have to go and study the real world. So that's why in all of the econometrics thesis I have my students do, they run regressions, because that's compelled to do by the academia. But I also ask them to study the real question at the same time. So statistics cannot be done without expending shoe leather. You have to go out and into the real world. So, for example, the question is, which one should we use, mean, median or mode? So, yesterday I was asking somebody and she told me that it depends on the data set. No, this is the wrong answer. It doesn't depend on the data set. It depends on what you are going to do with it. Why are you making a summary of the data? So the people say, because I am a statistician. Well, that's not enough. I am a statistician, I have to summarize, these are the 3 summaries. Makes no sense. You cannot do half of the job. This is pure theory. Tell me, why do you need this summary? Why do you need this? Somebody must need. If there is no need for it, then don't do it. You have all the data, just keep it. Why are you making a summary? If you need it, then you have to have a purpose. So this problem is hidden by the applied and theory distinction. On the theory side, we do mean, median, mode. Applied people will figure out which one to use. That's not allowed, not permitted. We have to do everything together. So stats folks, by creating this applied and theory distinction, they cripple our minds. They prevent us from thinking in the right directions. All right. I think that the rest of the stuff is covered in the lectures, and I have gone a bit over my time, but let me just conclude with this last slide. So there is this book by Donald/Deirdre McCloskey. He writes that in his classic Foundations of Economic Analysis, Samuelson used mathematics not because it's needed, but in order to impress people. And basically, it legitimizes his claim to authority. When you do a lot of heavy mathematics, people say, oh, this man is so intelligent. Whatever he says, we must believe. This is exactly the same as Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He runs regression and proves things. The other people, they don't know regression, so they believe whatever he says. So, the basic thing that I want you to understand is that the data that we see, the data we get, has all the information in it. There is nothing more. Now, what the conventional statistician does is he takes this data and he mixes it up with assumptions. Now, the data is the dirt, you mix it with water. Now you can make any kind of shape that you like. But the shape is created by the water, not by the dust, which is the data. So, statistics and econometrics adds untrue, complex information to get out of the data more than what the data is saying. In fact, you can shape it according to your own desires, because the assumptions that you add, you choose. Nobody is telling you, okay, I can assume that this is an ARMA model, I can assume this is an ARCH model, I can assume whatever you like. There's no restraint. So I can create whatever picture I like. I have this dust, I can shape it into whatever form I like. So now everybody is impressed. Look, this is what the data is saying. But this is not what the data is saying. This is how the statistician has shaped the data. So that's why this course, the one that I am trying to teach you, is purely data description. It has no theory in it whatsoever. There are no random variables. There is no probability. It is just how to look at the data and how to understand the data directly. This makes it intuitive, conceptual, hands-on, and there is nothing you are saying which is not directly contained in the data. So it gives you the truth about the data, as opposed to statistics and econometrics, which teach you how to do fraud with data. So I think that's where I will conclude this lecture, and in the rest of the sessions you will be given